What goes on in the mind of Jeffrey Dahmer? Psychiatrists believe that his mind was split off, and as if an event doesn't enter your consciousness, there was absolutely no humanity in any of his deeds. He claimed that it was not something that he wished to have done, since he only wanted to create a human slave, someone like a permanent zombified individual who would just stay with him and did not want to leave. That's the story that everyone knows. But what went on during the time when he was young until the day that he got caught? Well, earlier in life, we start from the day that he was to school around 13. He often was recognized by peers as a prankster, someone who would make them laugh, which later gave him the name of doing a Dahmer, which included simulating epileptic seizures or cerebral palsy to get the approval and likes from individuals at his school. What he would do is he would perform these tricks and he would receive money in return. There was no indication of anything that would happen in the later years to come. Nobody would have imagined that little Dahmer could become such a monster. Known by the world as the Cannibal of Milwaukee, in 1974, at age 14, around 9th grade, he began to drink beer. He found a way to sneak it into school, and he had begun drinking hard liquor, alcohol, in the daylight hours around the age of 14. He was, of course, seen by his friends and other people around him. So, as a friend asked him, "Why are you doing that? Why are you taking these beers and hard liquors at school? You should be focusing," he said. "That's just something I like to do." According to one friend, Dahmer explained that he was curious as to how do animals fit together. He didn't think anything of it, just waving it away as some childish curiosity. So, at school, in 1974, one day, there was an experiment to be done. While all the peers and Dahmer were sitting in the classroom, the teacher took out a fetal pig and told the class to pay attention. "Today we will take apart this pig and dissect it as part of class." No one would have thought that this event would imprint young Dahmer to do what he did. After the class, he was so fascinated that he took the remains home and kept the skeleton. This became as something that he just wanted to do as a hobby. He started to branch out into dogs and cats, to dissect them, to kill them. It could become like a hobby, taxidermy. That's what he said in his own words. But unfortunately, it turned out into this. One day, his classmate asked him, "Dahmer, Jeffrey, why the hell are you drinking scotch in the morning? Why are you doing that? You're just supposed to be in school, paying attention." Young Dahmer shrugged and said, "Alcohol is my medicine." Well, he was known as to be very polite, highly intelligent, but due to the circumstances of being a smart individual, he earned only average grades. He loved killing cats and dogs around his house, and still he knew it was wrong. His mind became infected with this disease. He found a crab and started examining it with the curiosity of a child, since there was no grown-up, no adult to tell him that this is not something that is supposed to be done. He kept all of this to himself. Dahmer just said, "I wanted to look and to see what the inside looks like." He involved his thoughts with scenes of violence and the inside of the intestines, and it became a compulsion. In his own words, just to look inside. Well, it couldn't be the fault of his mom or his dad, since they loved him very much. And his father said, "He seemed such a good boy. There were no signs of anything weird or suspicious at that age." Going back to 1975, the time he was 15, his thoughts only grew from that point that he dissected the pig and did the same with the animals around his neighborhood. He knew that his thoughts were unshareable. There was no way he could discuss it with anyone. So he closed himself off from this part of him. He put on a mask, a facade of happiness, of joy, of an average individual. He knew his mom would never understand, and his father either. So in one instance in 1975, Dahmer decapitated the carcass of a dog, and before nailing the body to a tree and impaling the skull upon a stick in a woodland behind his house, the same year, his father taught his son how to preserve animal bones. That's what got him more into this practice. He learned new tricks on how to properly do this to make it last longer. As a prank, he later invited a friend to view the display, claiming he had discovered the remains by chance. Of course, his friend would never have thought that he was the one who had done this all along and displayed them on the display like that. He would be in shock if he knew. Later, around the age of 16, in 1976, when he was about 16, Dahmer conceived a fantasy of rendering unconscious a particular female or male jogger he found attractive. Later, in 1976, around 16 years old, Dahmer got a fantasy, a rather peculiar one, filled with some sexual attraction to a particular kind of male jogger that he found attractive. This fantasy was to find the hitchhiker and then making sexual use of his body. On one occasion, Dahmer concealed himself in the bushes with a baseball bat while he lied in wait for this man. However, the jogger did not pass by on that particular day. His fantasy laid to rest. Dahmer later admitted that this was the first attempt to attack a render and individual submissive to him. We skip ahead to 1977, where he reached the age of 17. His grades started to decline. His mental started to decline also, when his motivation for doing good at school did no longer had any effect on him. This year, his father and mother tried to save their marriage, but it was inevitable. They divorced in September, when his father Lionel discovered that his mother Joyce had an affair. So, in 1977, they decided to divorce. Some may say that this might have been the thing that got him off the edge of sanity. But is that so? In his own words, "I don't believe that my parents had anything to do with it. It was all my own doing. I don't blame anyone for what I have done. It was all me. My father and mother were always loving and caring towards me." To continue, in 1978, by the age of 18, his father finally moved out of the house because the process of the divorce had a tight grip on the happiness and the state of the family. It was too bitter. Young Dahmer graduates from high school. At around this age, Dahmer discovered that he had gay fantasies and that he was actually gay. He had a brief relationship with another teenage boy but never had any intercourse. It began in 1978 at the age of 18. In his own words, I had these fantasies of taking him hostage and do what I want. I know it was wrong, but I can't stop. My mind fills with these fantasies of violence and sex and control over the person, to be in complete dominance, to make them submit to me, to make a human slave. I know I want it. I must achieve it. It is getting out of control. Well, to continue, he began fantasizing about dominating and controlling a complete submissive male partner in his early to mid-teens. He masturbated on these fantasies and gradually involved the torso, focusing on the chest. These fantasies gradually became intertwined with dissection, more violence. So then, the day came that it came the turning point of Dahmer. He knew there was no turning back. In his own words, I did not expect this to happen. There was no way in my mind that I had ever thought this has become a possibility, but it happened, and all the pieces fell into place like everything fit. The house was empty. The hitchhiker was there. I was there. It was the perfect scene. To continue, he picked up his hitchhiker, who was 18, bare-chested, stood there. Dahmer got aroused. But the male was not gay, and after many attempts of making him submit to him, he said he wanted to leave. But Dahmer, of course, did not want him to leave. That was his objective in the first place, to make a submissive slave. He plunged him with a 10-pound dumbbell, strangled him, stripped him of his clothes, and explored the body with his hand, then masturbating as he stood above the corpse, then dragged him into the basement, dismembered his body. He later buried the remains in a shallow grave in his backyard. Several weeks later, he digged up the grave, took the remains, and pared the flesh from the bones. He dissolved the flesh in acid before flushing the solution down the toilet. He crushed the bones with a sledgehammer and scattered them in the woodland behind the family home. He threw Hicks' necklace and his knife used to dismember him from the Westbeth Road into the Cahoya River. That was his first experience of a terrible, terrible, cruel crime. There was no turning back now. In his own words, "I still don't believe this has happened, but it's like it sparked the flame within me that I cannot stop. No matter how long I fight, no matter how much I try to resist, these thoughts come back over and over again. There's nothing I can do. I can try to live a normal life, but it is only pretend. I don't know if anyone can help me. Surely my father can't. My mother cannot help me. Psychiatrists won't understand. It would put me in real disposition. I cannot talk to anyone. I can only fight the urge and resist the unthinkable." Throughout the ages, the timeline between 1978 and 1984, Dahmer enrolled into university to major in business, but he was unproductive. Because of his alcohol abuse, this still continued from the day he was young. He was successful in rifling. That was his only good thing he got out of this situation. 1979 came along. No incidents happened. His mind is still filled with this filth. There is nothing I can do, in his own words. I tried to live a normal life. Tried to not think of what I'd done. But no matter how I bury these thoughts, nothing can stop it from reoccurring. 1979. Finally my dad came and he asked, "What are you gonna do with your life, son? What are you gonna do? Make something of it. Let me help you." Dahmer said, "Well, I try to, but everything I do just seems to fail. There is nothing I can do. Do you have something you suggest, father?" His father said, "Son, you should go to the army. They will teach you discipline. You will get a grip of your life. I urge you to join the US Army." And so he did. Dahmer agreed. He thinks, this is the solution for the problem. There is something that I can do. I just need to become more assertive in what I want and tell my mind that I don't want this to happen anymore. But after the training, he succeeded, slightly above average. He tried to make something of it. Then 1989 comes along. He's still under a lot of pressure from these thoughts he is still having, reoccurring dreams, nightmares maybe. Due to the alcohol abuse, his performance in the army deteriorated. In March, he was deemed unsuitable for military and got discharged. Honorable discharge. Well, since he had no place to stay, he knew he could not return to his father, and then he traveled to Miami Beach, Florida, attempted to live by his own means, wanted freedom from people around him. He found a job at a delicatessen sandwich shop and rented a motel. All of his salary went to alcohol. There is nothing he could do to stop that addiction. It of course strengthens his thoughts, or maybe could kinda numb them, to keep them away for how long he could control his life and got evicted from his hotel for no payment. September 1981. By the end of the year, Dad asked to return to him. Depicted on this picture is his father and mother, sitting at the murder trial of Jeffrey Dahmer in Milwaukee, 1992. So, since he could not return to his father, he traveled to Miami Beach. But, of course, after no payment, he got evicted and then he asked his father to return to him. September comes along, 2 weeks after his return to his father's house. He got arrested for drunk and disorderly conduct. Father tried to make him quit alcohol. He did all he could. He told him, "Son, stop your drinking, get your life in order, find something to do that pleases your mind, gives you some ease, make a goal for yourself, do something, but please quit the alcohol." Well, all his attempts were unsuccessful. Still, Jeffrey Dahmer continued to drink heavily. Then he got an idea. "Son, you must live with your grandmother. I know that she will have a positive effect on your state of mind. She is a good woman. She loves you very much, always talks lovingly about you." Dahmer agreed. "Maybe Grandma can help me to find the grip of my life." 1982. Occurred another incident for Dahmer. Still, of course, in his current disposition of being unemployed, heavily drinking, his mind continuously dozing off into unknown places of violence. He got arrested for indecent exposure on August 8, 1982 at Wisconsin State Fair Park. He was observed exposing himself on the south side of the Colosseum, in which 25 people were present, including women and children. For this incident, he was convicted and fined $50 plus court costs. I did not like it. All I wanted was a sex slave just for myself, who would stay and do as I wish, do as I please. It came to this. 1985, he got hired as a mixer at the Milwaukee Ambrosia Chocolate Factory. He worked from 11 to 7 a.m. 6 nights a week. Maybe this could get a grip of his life. These terrors that haunt Dahmer. Shortly after he started his job, an incident occurred in which Dahmer was propositioned by another man while reading in a West Allis public library. There was a stranger who seemed to have wanted to be in contact with Dahmer. He offered him a note, and on that note said, "I will perform oral on you as you wish." Dahmer, being in shock, did not respond to this offer, but what it did do, it made a mess out of him. This stirred up fantasies about controlling and dominance that he has developed as a teenager. As a response to that, he started to go to the Milwaukee bars and bathhouses and bookstores, since he could not turn back the time to say yes to that offer. He started to induce it himself. In 1985, another incident occurred where he stole a mannequin from a store, which he used for sexual stimulation. He thought that this would be the answer and this would still his desires, but it did not do as much as he wanted. And above all, Grandma discovered his little secret. She opened up the closet one day and saw that he had placed the mannequin there, of course demanding that he would discard it. One time, when he was in the bathhouse, he met a man, but he noted that there was something he did not like about these getting-togethers with strangers. They moved too much. He wanted the partner to be as still and like a mannequin himself, but a human being. As Dahmer said in his own words, I trained myself to look at people as objects of pleasure instead of people. That's why I thought there was something I can do. I can use sleeping pills, do it in liquor with sedatives, and then when they ingest it, they will fall asleep, and I will have my perfect zombie. I can do what I want. There was no way that this can fail. So next, that's what he did. When the victim was asleep, he would perform acts of intercourse, but his membership got revoked since he was using sleeping pills, and that caused a lot of trouble. He could not return to the bathhouses again. He got an idea of digging up a coffin from the ground and take the corpse home. That would be his perfect victim. He would be still, complete submission. But he was unsuccessful because the ground was too hard, he couldn't do it. Next he got his following victim, Tommy. He retained his head, wrapped it in a blanket, boiled it into a mixture of sole wax, an alkali-based industrial detergent, and bleach in an effort to retain the skull, which he then used as stimulation for masturbation. Eventually the skull became too brittle by this bleach process, so Dahmer pulverized and disposed of it. After that incident, there was no control. It became compulsive. He gave up on trying to be normal. To the outside world, he seemed very normal indeed. Of course, he then started to actively seek victims. 2 months later, Dahmer lured a 14-year-old prostitute into his grandma's house. He said, "You can pose for nudes for $50. He then proceeded to drug and strangle him, dismember him, boil his skull, cleanse with bleach, and pulverize it after a week, because it became too brittle due to the process. Several more of these instances, most to pose for pictures for $50, proceeded to drug him and continue on doing it over and over again. 1988 comes along. Grandma asks him to move out. He was drinking too heavily. He moved out and found a one-bedroom apartment at North 24th Street at September 25. He got arrested a day later for drugging and sexually fondling a 13-year-old boy. His father hired an attorney to defend his son. Dahmer underwent a series of psychological evaluations prior to his court hearings. The evaluations found that Dahmer harbored deep feelings of alienation. Then a second evaluation followed, 2 months later revealed Dahmer to be an impulsive individual, very highly suspicious of others, and dismayed by this lack of accomplishment in life. His probation officer also referred a 1987 diagnosis of Dahmer suffering from schizoid personality disorder. for presentation to the court. 1978. Dahmer brought 25-year-old to a hotel. He had no intent to kill him, but drugged him and just lied beside the body. To explore it, followed with more sexually suggestive moves. The following morning, the 25-year-old was black and blue. Blood seeping from the corner of his mouth and fists was bruised. Dahmer had no memory of doing this. In his own words, "I don't know what happened. This is not what I intended to do. My intention is always good. I don't know why this keeps happening. Is it a blackout? What happened I don't know, but my hands are bruised and it happened again." Then, 1989, following the previous incident, he pleaded guilty to charge of second-degree sexual assault and of enticing a child for immoral purposes. 2 months after his conviction, and 2 months prior to his sentencing, Dahmer got his hands of his 5th victim, a 24-year-old mixed-race model, Anthony Sears, whom he met at a gay bar around March 1989. According to Dahmer, on his particular occasion he was not looking to commit a crime. However, shortly before closing time that evening, Sears just started talking to me. Dahmer lured him into his grandmother's home, where the pair engaged in oral sex before Dahmer drugged and strangled Sears. He placed the corpse in the bathtub, decapitated the body, stripped the flesh and pulverized the bones, disposed in the trash. He found him attractive, and because of this reason he preserved his head and genitalia in acetone and stored it in a wooden box in his world locker. Standing in his workplace after that, 1989, sentenced to 5-year probation and 1 year in house corrections with work release permit. So he kept his job and temporarily moved into his grandma's house. Well, turns out that dad almost caught him, in his own words. "My father almost caught me. He once came into my room and he saw a wooden box and he wanted to know what is in there. Of course I did not want him to know my secret. There is no way he would ever understand. It would be the end of this thing. So he said, 'What is in the box, son?' So it turned into an argument, but of course he kept the head and the genitals of the victim in the box. Dad took it and brought it into the garage. He wanted to smash it open to see what is in it, but fortunately enough, they came to an agreement and it all laid to rest. There was no way he would be found out this time. 1990 comes along. He moved out from his grandma's house and went into his final apartment at the Oxford, room 213. He took the head and the genitalia with him from his victim Sears, which he loved. He was so attracted to him, he wanted to keep him with Dahmer at all times. Well, his apartment was close to work, cost about $300 a month, very affordable. Within a week of moving, he killed his 6th victim, Raymond Smith. He said, "Well, I promise you, I will give you $50 if you come and have sex with me. We can drink something at my place." He of course did what he always done, gave him a sleeping pill, waited until they was subdued, and proceeded to do what he wanted to do. But he got an idea. I want to film. I want to make this last as long as I can. I need to buy a camera. So he purchased a Polaroid camera that took instant pictures. He laid his victims in suggestive positions before he started the dismembering process. After that, he took pictures during the dismembering. In his bathroom, dissolved him in acid. He sometimes sprayed the skull and placed this skull alongside of his favorite victim in the town in the cabinet. This got completely out of control. There are still 2 years left before he gets caught. He cannot control his urges. They are too strong. 1 week later, he lured a young man in his apartment. Dahmer accidentally consumed the drink with sedatives that he prepared for his victim. So this, of course, resulted in something that was not supposed to happen. But he got robbed, and he got took advantage of. Well, of course, his prize was nothing that of any value, if you ask me, in his own words. He robbed me of some clothing, $300, and a watch. Couldn't care less. Never reported it. Of course, I don't want anything to do with the police. They wouldn't help me. They can never understand. 1 month later, another 27-year-old victim lured into apartment, drugged, strangled, and placed his skeleton. Oh, let's not continue with this explanation. 3 months later, another 22-year-old victim. He met him at a bookstore, said, "I will give you $50 if you allow me to listen to your heart and your stomach." Well, found it kind of funny. He said okay. Dahmer attempted sex, but that costs extra, the 22-year-old said. He proceeded to give him sleeping pills since he not agree, and he was in too much of a... Well, he was being a smart ass, if you ask me. That's not how I like them. Dahmer then posed the nude boy for various suggestive Polaroid photographs before placing it in his bathtub for dismemberment. Dahmer repeatedly kissed and talked to the severed head while he dismembered him. The remainder of the body, that is. 3 weeks later, another 22-year-old. He was a father. He got persuaded to return to apartment for a drink. He would give him money to pose for pictures, but since he was not very much attracted to him, and in his own words, I did not want to wake him up because if I would, he would be mad at me that he has been drugged. Of course, that's not something I want to have happened. So then he strangled and dismembered the body. Again, doing the same thing over and over again. It got so routine that it didn't even affect what he was doing, that it was something out of the ordinary. It became routine, in his own words. And then he laid it all to rest for about 5 months. When 1991 came along, it got more out of control and became like an experiment. April 7, 1991. A 19-year-old boy got lured, drugged, since he discovered that there was possibly a new method that he can employ that will get him the ultimate satisfaction he was searching. Because up to this point nothing helps. There is still a void within Dahmer. He decided to drill a hole in the skull over this young boy and injected with hydrochloric acid with Bester to create a human slave zombie, a permanent submissive state. Unfortunately, it never worked. But the boy woke up and he said he had a headache. He asked time. Dahmer drugged and strangled him, and he retained the skull. Same procedure to get rid of it all. Well, of course, there are residents in the apartment. There must be some kind of clue of something going on. Didn't they notice? Well, turns out that the residents were complaining to the building manager about smells. Strange odors coming from 213. They heard sounds of objects falling, a chainsaw. They contacted the owner and said, "You must check it out, something is wrong." Well, of course, he must do something about it, so he contacted Dahmer. He got contacted several times. And then, of course, he said, in his own words, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm trying to do the best I can, but my freezer broke and, everything got wasted and it brings such a smell, especially with the meats." On the other instance, in his own words, "I am sorry. Building manager, I am so sorry, but my tropical fish died. I was too late to clean it up. I will do better, please. It's alright, you can trust me." Later in May 1991, he met a 14-year-old victim, offered him money to accompany him to his apartment to pose for pictures. The boy did not want it at first, but he came along anyway. Dahmer proceeded to drug him, perform oral sex on him, and then he fell unconscious into the bedroom. He proceeded to use his new technique he got to make his zombie a reality, someone who was there always. He could keep him in the room. He could go to work and he was still there. He has no mind of his own. He's just there when I want him to be, like a doll, but a human doll with no mind of its own. That's all I wanted. I did not want to do this. I did never want to things that lead to such a horrible position where I'm in right now, but I'm in this state, so I gotta proceed. He drilled a hole in the skull and injected hydrochloric acid into the frontal lobe. Well, Dahmer said, "I need to take a break." He drank a beer while lying alongside the boy. He fell asleep briefly. He left his apartment to drink at a bar and to buy more alcohol, since this was a constant problem in his life, his alcohol addiction. When he returned to his home, the boy was sitting outside on the street with 3 women. He approached the women and he told that this was his friend. He said, in his own words, "This is my friend, he just got out of my home. I don't know why, but he always acts so crazy when we drunk. Oh, he just poured himself some Jack Daniels and I just went to the store to buy some more, but let me just take him home. It's okay." The women, of course, did not allow him to just go free with this because they smelled something fishy going on here. They said, "Well, we already called the police, so you might as well just wait till they come, otherwise they will follow you." And of course, well, the police came. They listened to the explanation. He said it was just a boyfriend and we had too much to drink and there was a fight. He says to the police, well, he always does that when we drink. So, but of course there was no injury, only a scrape on his knee. The police believed him and they let him go. The woman noted that he had blood upon his testicles and bleeding from his rectum, and struggled to go with Dahmer, but the police said, "Well, shut the hell up. You are interfering with a legal procedure, miss." Well, arriving at the apartment of Dahmer, he showed the police pictures and proving that they were lovers indeed, since he showed some intimate photos, since they noticed a strange smell. Well, they didn't investigate further because it all seemed very fine indeed, and just noted off as a domestic dispute. Dahmer injected again the acid in the brain of the boy, but this became fatal. This is not what he wanted to have happened, but it happened. He took a day leave from work. On this day he spent the whole afternoon dismembering the body. July 22, 1991, the day he got caught. After luring a man into a home to offer $100 to pose for nudes, he agreed, a 32-year-old male. When he entered, he saw boxes of hydrochloric acid on the floor and noted a tropical fish in the tank next to him. Out of nowhere, Dahmer grabbed his hand, tried to handcuff him, but was unsuccessful. He said, "What is happening?" But he couldn't cuff him, obviously, and he said, "Follow him into his bedroom." He noted a small poster of a nude male, and the videotape of The Exorcist 3 was playing, and he saw a 57-gallon drum from which a smell came, a very strong odor. Dahmer got out a knife and he said he wanted to take pictures of him. Of course, the victim agreed and he said okay, and started to unbutton his shirt. Dahmer started rocking back and forth like he was getting into a trance of some sort, started chanting before turning attention to him. The victim saw a moment when Dahmer was not on focus and punched him in the face. He saw an opportunity to run to the door, and he ran as fast as he could, got outside. Once he was outside, he called the police and asked, "There was a freak in that place. Please put my handcuffs off. Please help me." The officers went to the apartment and found a large knife. After investigation, opening a drawer contained pictures of human bodies in different stages of dismemberment. He then said to his fellow officer, "These are for real." When Dahmer saw him holding the pictures, he fought to resist arrest, but he got overpowered, cuffed him and called a second squad for backup. After research, they found 4 severed heads, 7 skulls, some painted with some bleached in a closet in Dahmer's bedroom, blood drippings upon a tray in the bottom of the refrigerator, and 2 human hearts, a portion of an arm, and muscle wrapped in plastic bags since he was starting to consume them. In freezer, an entire torso and the bag of human organs and flesh. Stuck to the ice at the bottom, 2 entire skeletons, a part of hands and 2 severed penises, a mummified scalp, and a 57-gallon drum with 3 dismembered torsos dissolving in acid solution. 74 Polaroid pictures detailing the dismemberment of the victims. July 1991. The confession. It took the officers about 24 hours in a room and listening to the confession of Dahmer, trying to hear every single twisted word coming out of his mouth until he fully confessed. It switched animals to humans and it became compulsive. I still, to this day, do not understand why I did it, but I couldn't stop it. It was like something that had become a part of me. The father of Dahmer wrote a book called The Father's Story, trying to understand what happened to him, what could have led to this type of fascination. and psychiatrists to this day don't understand. It was an incessant or never-ending desire to be with someone at whatever cost. Someone good-looking, really nice-looking. It just filled my thoughts every day long. When asked as to why he preserved a total of 7 skulls and the entire skeleton of 2 victims, Dahmer stated he had been in the process of constructing a private altar of victim skulls which he had intended to display on the back table located in his living room, and upon which he had photographed the bodies of many of his victims. After asked in November 18th, 1991, an interview to whom the altar was dedicated, they asked. Dahmer replied, "The altar was dedicated to myself. It was a place where I could feel at home." He further described his intended altar as a place for meditation, from where he believed he could draw a sense of power. Adding to this, if this, meaning his arrest, had happened 6 months later, this is what they have found: an altar dedicated to me.